Tonight's big story breakdown, criminal justice reform. The Oklahoma Innocence Project asking for Joshua Christon, who's been behind bars for 18 years for murder, to be released from prison after new evidence came to light. Fox 25's Grant Palmer joins us live. Grant, what are they claiming the evidence reveals?
They and Christon's family say the same type of weapon that was used in the murder was found on a different person.
18 years of weeping, 18 years of pain, 18 years of waiting on a call, waiting on a knock on the door, and waiting on my brother to hug me and tell me he's free.
That's how long Joshua Christon's brother Octavia says he and his family have been waiting for justice to prevail. Christon was convicted of first-degree murder for the shooting death of Christopher Thompson in 2007. But Reverend Mario Johnson and Christon's family say evidence that was suppressed reveals Christon was wrongfully convicted.
The same type of weapon that was used in the murder was found on a whole nother person. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out.
Johnson says this evidence was included in a post-conviction relief application that was filed by the Oklahoma Innocence Project. He believes the case would have had a different outcome if this evidence was brought to light.
If this evidence and information was able to be submitted to the defense counsel, and if the jury would have heard this evidence, I truly believe that they would have not convicted Joshua of the crime of murder.
According to the trial transcript, the victim's brother testified Winford McKissick, who was sentenced to 15 years for accessory for the murder, as the shooter, not Christon. Christon's family also claims the district attorney used rap lyrics found in a plastic container in Christon's bedroom as misleading evidence.
I pray that the DA's office will take a good look at this and do the right thing, because I believe that we do have an innocent man in prison, and he's been there for over 18 years, and it's time for him to come home.
Now, a decision on a decision is expected to be made on the Innocence Project's application of post-conviction relief on August 11th. Christon is also set to go before the Pardon and Parole Board for a vote on his hearing November 6th. Reporting live, Grant Palmer, Fox 25 News.
Thank you, Grant. Earlier this year, the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law released a new report on prosecutorial misconduct titled "The Truth Will Always Come Out." And according to OK Appleseed, the report reveals systemic failures, which could have resulted in numerous wrongful convictions and sheds light on the lack of accountability faced by prosecutors in the state. Now, according to the research, many convictions in the state were tainted by suppressed evidence, and estimates up to 30% of exonerated cases involved prosecutorial misconduct. Over the last few years, Oklahoma lawmakers have been filing legislation centered around criminal justice reform. A big one we've seen is the Oklahoma Survivors Act. It directs courts to reduce a criminal defendant's sentence if they can prove domestic abuse played a significant role in their offense. The final version of the bill received unanimous approval in the state Senate and passed by a vote of 86-4 in the House. Governor Kevin Stitt signed it into law last May after vetoing an earlier version for concerns about the scope of the legislation. The legislation does have a retroactive component, meaning that current incarcerated domestic violence survivors may be eligible for sentencing relief. Since the Oklahoma Survivors Act became law, we've seen several people apply for resentencing. Lisa Moss, the first to be granted a hearing under the Survivors Act. She's also the first to be released under the provision. Moss, originally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for conspiracy and first-degree felony murder. She was convicted in the 1990 death of her husband, Mike Moss. Now, while her brother had pled guilty to killing Mike, Lisa Moss served more than 34 years in prison. But in January, her application for resentencing was heard by a Seminole County judge, and at the conclusion of the hearing, Lisa Moss was released. Now, in October, attorneys representing 3 domestic violence survivors in separate murder cases filed applications to be considered under the Survivors Act. According to an attorney with the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, all 3 are Oklahoma mothers who've been serving decades in prison for surviving horrific incidents of stalking and abuse. Judith Nix and Kim Perigo, both convicted of first-degree murder in the 2001 deaths of their ex-husbands. Carlo Enloe was convicted of second-degree murder in the 2004 death of her ex-boyfriend. In February, a woman found guilty of manslaughter also submitted an application for resentencing. Taisha Long shot and killed Ray Brown at a Bricktown hotel in 2020. According to her attorney, Long had been granted a protective order against Brown more than a year before the shooting. Records show Long also sued Brown for auto negligence 6 months before the homicide. Long's attorney says despite the legal proceedings against him, Brown reached out to Long asking for his apartment key back. She agreed to give it back to him at the Hilton where he was staying.
He got upset that she was texting people. They got into a verbal altercation. She ended up leaving and goes to the elevator bank, and he chased her out with hands out. And she always had a gun on her because of protection, and she ended up shooting him.
Long was convicted in 2022 and sentenced to 27 years in prison. Her attorney says her best chance is the Survivors Act because she could get her sentence reduced to 15 years or less. We've seen a slew of applications for resentencing under the Survivors Act. April Wilkins was the first person to apply when it first took effect last August. She was convicted in the 1998 shooting death of her ex-fiance Terry Carlton. Wilkins always maintained she acted in self-defense after being held against her will and raped. She served 27 years in prison. It's been granted the right to a resentencing hearing. Last month, her attorney asked the Tulsa County judge to release Wilkins under supervision until her resentencing hearing. They alleged her incarceration is unlawful because of delays, but the motion was denied. Her next court date scheduled for early September. Now, this year, lawmakers took another crack at making changes to the state's current failure to protect law. This legislation refers to cases where a person is charged with failing to protect a child from somebody else's abuse. Now, officials say this charge can carry up to a life sentence. During this past session, lawmakers wanted to take another angle at reforming that law with Senate Bill 594, but it never made it to the governor's desk. This measure would have created a short sentencing range and an affirmative defense if domestic violence was a provable factor in the case.
These issues are complicated, and our system right now is not set up for people who are surviving domestic violence to be successful, to get away, to receive the services that they need, and that things are a lot more complicated than just, why didn't she leave?
Attorney Colleen McCarty says 92% of people convicted under this law are women, and had some received harsher sentencing than the abusers themselves. Similar legislation introduced in 2019, but also failed to make it to the finish line.
If a person is under a crime themselves, this really makes it very difficult for them to report another crime if they know they don't have some type of protection. So again, we're trying to expand the protection for the child. If a caregiver has some protection, knowing that they can go make this complaint to the DA or the police department, then we think we have a better chance to protect more of our children.
If Senate Bill 594 would have passed, lawmakers say it would have been a retroactive bill, meaning it would allow people currently incarcerated to be given shorter sentences or possibly released. Now, that was your big story breakdown. You can learn more about Joshua Christon case and what comes next for this on OKCFox.com. Plus, watch all of our previous big story breakdowns on our YouTube page. Scan the QR code on your screen or search OKC Fox.